Welcome to this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market. This report is for the week of October 6th through the 12th. We will get started in just a moment with the luxury market report. Then we'll move on, talk about Manhattan and Brooklyn. At the end, I'll wrap it all up, share some additional information with you, and also best strategies for success to help you have the most successful outcome possible if you are a current buyer or seller in this market. There were 25 contracts signed in the luxury market last week. That is 4 fewer than the previous week. The number one contract was 6-8 East 82nd Street, 2 townhouses being sold together. Total ask was $28 million. The houses, which are owned by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, span 41 feet in width and have a combined 12,600 square feet. They sold in a bidding war above the asking price to a buyer who will turn this into a single residence. The houses were in contract within 16 days. Wow. This really quick turnaround over the asking price really speaks to the appetite that buyers have for Manhattan luxury real estate. I mean, that is going to be quite spectacular. So can't wait to see what this new owner does with these 2 properties. The number 2 contract was 54 at 111 West 57th Street. It was asking $21 million, reduced from $26.75 million when the building started marketing off of floor plans back in June of 2016. This condo has almost 4,200 square feet. It includes 3 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms. Features a 37 by 21 foot great room with 14-foot ceilings that overlooks Central Park. 3rd bedroom, measuring 22 feet by 12 feet, also overlooks Central Park. 49 of the 60 units in the building have closed so far, averaging $4,475 a square foot. The amenities in this building include a concierge, a fitness center, an 82-foot pool, lounge, terrace, private dining room, plus a covered driveway entrance. This marks the 12th time this year that a unit in this building has taken the number 1 or number 2 spot in the luxury market report. The total weekly asking price sales volume, $217,240,000. The average asking price, $8,689,000. Median asking price, $6,500,000. Average discount from original ask to last asking price, 9%. And the average days on the market, 621. Let's take a look now at what's going on in Manhattan. Manhattan feels a little like it's in this holding pattern. The supply did tick up a bit, but that looks like it's starting to slow down. The demand, if we measure that by the 30-day moving window of contracts signed, rose over 800, which was nice to see. At the weekly level, we saw that the new listings kind of jumped a little, but the contracts slowed down a bit. Could this be a result of this holiday period? Yes, possibly. However, the question really comes down to this. Once we kind of put the holidays behind us and we're kind of free and clear until the next holidays, what is this fall season going to shape up to be? And what is the demand going to look like? What's the supply going to look like? We'll get into the numbers now just to talk about what happened last week. In Manhattan, we saw the supply 372 for the week. That is up a little over 13%. Contract signed 201. That is down 9%. Off market 154. That is also down a little over 14%. The supply for the month, 1,697, 21%. On the positive side, contract signed 841, that's up almost 13%. Off-market properties, 609, that is up a little over 12%. And the market pulse shows, at least according to this snapshot, this weekly moment in time, we see that it looks like it is neutral for the most part, although it has traveled upwards a bit, possibly favoring the sellers. We'll get into a little more about that just so you have more information to really go by. That chart is great, but it is a bit misleading. The liquidity pace chart, this 30-day moving window of contract signed, as I said, it moved over 800. We're currently at 841. That is up 18% from last month and up 7.5% from last year. If you have questions about the Manhattan market, you can always post those below. Now we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at what's going on in Brooklyn. Then we're going to get into some additional information, including strategies to help you be successful in this market. A little bit like Manhattan, Brooklyn also seems to be kind of stuck in this somewhat, let's call it, neutral gear while we're kind of waiting for this fall season to kick in. Yes, supply is rising, but the overall demand remains quite lackluster. So at the weekly level, we see both the active listings and the contract signed dropped a bit. This is, again, likely due to this holiday activity. Going forward, however, it will be very interesting to see how the supply and the demand perform and what the Brooklyn market is going to shape up to look like this fall. The supply for the week in Brooklyn, 199, that is up almost 12%. Contracts signed, 123, that is up a little over 3%. Off-market properties, 81, that is down almost 31%. The supply for the month in Brooklyn, 875, that's up a little over 6%. Contracts signed, 506, that's down almost 6%. Off-market properties, 335, that rose almost 22% for the week. The latest reading in the market pulse for Brooklyn shows a kind of solidly neutral market, pretty much in balance in terms of supply and demand. It is up just a little bit from last month and down just a little bit from last year. The liquidity pace chart in Brooklyn, 506 contracts were signed in the last 30 days. That is up just a little bit from last month and down a little over 2% for last year. Any questions about Brooklyn? Post them below. Reach out to me directly at Sotheby's. We're going to move on now. I'm going to share some additional information with you about both Manhattan and Brooklyn and just kind of this overall market and how to be successful if you are in this market as a buyer or a seller. So we've touched on what's happening in the luxury market, the Manhattan market, and the Brooklyn market kind of broken down in that way. We saw a little bit of a pullback. So wondering if this is possibly due to this kind of holiday season that we're in, or if this is going to end up being some kind of lackluster fall market with some pockets of success here and there. In the luxury market, again, 25 contracts signed. That's 4 fewer than the previous week. 5 of those were at 10 million and above. Condos, 16, co-op 6, townhouses 3, 14 were uptown and 11 were downtown. The supply in Manhattan in total, 6,926, Brooklyn 3,515. Pending sales, 2,924 for Manhattan, 1,811 for Brooklyn. Off-market properties, Manhattan, 3,700, Brooklyn, 1,752. Average days on the market in Manhattan, 80, in Brooklyn, 60. And that liquidity pace, 30-day moving window of contracts signed, Manhattan, 841, Brooklyn, 506. Mortgage rates went down a tiny bit, as you can see from this chart, for both the 30-year conforming and the jumbo. Going to continue to keep an eye on those rates. It is making a very big difference for many, many buyers in this market. We're going to look at a couple of charts. Now this week, we're going to look at how the climate index and prices line up. This is becoming, for many, many sellers, a very challenging market in which to sell. As we see the listing climate kind of dropping, typically prices would follow, but looking deeper, we see that the higher lows of the climate index recently hint at a market that is in slow recovery mode. We know there are a lot of variables here, so depending on which part of the market you are in, you may be seeing something very different than somebody who's looking at it in a different sector of this market, this New York City market. But what this chart could be suggesting, at least for Manhattan, is that this fall season brings a market that is kind of building a base for the spring season. If we look at the chart, similar chart for Brooklyn, what we need to kind of be looking at is understanding the Brooklyn market as it compares to the Manhattan market, where the climate index lows were sub 1. Brooklyn, while not rising as high, has remained far more consistent. There is still this steady demand for Brooklyn on the part of the buyers, and that is likely contributing to this kind of climate perhaps being a little less challenging in Brooklyn than it is in Manhattan. Still, really going forward, the long-term trend of rising prices in Brooklyn are definitely going to need some help from the listing climate. This is a bit of a projection, right? But if we continue to see this kind of lackluster demand going on in Brooklyn for, let's say, through this fall season and maybe even to the spring season, we may see that the prices in Brooklyn start to become affected by these conditions. So if you are a seller in this market, this is challenging. As I mentioned earlier, there are different sectors to this market: neighborhoods, category of property, price range. Is it a luxury property? Is it not a luxury property? Is it in a hot neighborhood? Is it in a kind of a solid, but let's call it not so frothy kind of neighborhood where we're not seeing as much activity? Sellers, in order to be successful, please, please, please pay attention to your strategy. That includes your asking price. You will know pretty quickly if you are on target. You should see traffic, offers, possibly bidding wars. We don't know exactly till a property goes on the market what's going to happen. But for sure, if you are on the market, you're not getting showings, it's slow for you. If you are a serious seller, it is absolutely in your best interest to adjust your asking price. Don't wait too long. We still have a pretty good runway left of the fall market. We are now kind of midpoint in October. The buyers that are in the market are definitely in the market. They are looking, they want to buy something that works for them. By the time we get to Thanksgiving, things will start to quiet down. So you've got about a month to make your deal. This is a great time to be making any adjustments to your strategy that you're thinking about making. Again, this is all driven by what your goals are. If your goal is to sell, do not wait. If you're not really sure if you want to sell, don't really care if you sell, then I guess you could keep doing what you're doing, but understand that you will likely get the same result that you're getting now, which is if you're not getting traffic, then you're not going to suddenly start seeing traffic. And as I've said, the longer you sit on the market, in the eyes of the buyers, the less your property is worth. So you want to make the most money, get your deal done. You've got about a month left in this fall market. Make those adjustments. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out and ask me. I'm always happy to share my thoughts with you, share data with you, help you determine, kind of what would be a good pivot move. Buyers, we're watching those rates go down just a wince. Hopefully, if that continues, there will be kind of even more opportunity for buyers. Again, it is a kind of a challenging market for you too, because there are properties that are flying off the shelf practically the moment they come on the market. Others are sitting. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. Could mean they're a little overpriced. So I would really encourage you, if you are seeing something out there and maybe it's priced a little high or you feel like it's priced a little high, go see it anyway if it interests you, because you can always make an offer. If the seller is interested, perhaps you can make a deal with them. But I think because this is such a complicated, contradictory market, I would really advise buyers to go look at things that interest them and not really stand on ceremony or even wait around till the sellers decide they're going to adjust their price, if they ever do. I think this way you can satisfy your curiosity. Maybe this is something you like, maybe it isn't. But in any event, you will have figured out whether this is something that can work for you. And if it is, make an offer and see what happens. That is it for this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market. As always, my thanks to the Olshan Luxury Report and to Urban Digs. The work they do helps me to help you to make great decisions. I'll be back next week with the very latest news on what is happening in the New York City real estate market. In the meantime, take care.